So we're going to get going right now. To start with, I'd like to welcome Paul Sheen. He's the Alberta Sales Manager, correct, for Pella Windows and one of our premier sponsors. Paul.
All right, thanks, Terry. Good morning, delegates, exhibitors, and organizers. As mentioned, my name is Paul Shane. I'm the Alberta Sales Manager for Pella Western Canada. Pella is pleased to be a premier sponsor again this year for Fenestration Canada's Spring Conference. I invite all attendees to come over and see our table during the supplier showcases so we can show off our latest development, which is called Steady Set. A brief overview about today's session, this morning's session. In 2023, Fenestration Canada engaged the Farnsworth Group to provide a Canadian-specific fenestration market study for our membership. This research was launched a few months ago, and in today's session, our presenter Brad will show the results from the 2024 Canada Window and Door Shipment Research, as well as present and discuss current Canadian economic fundamentals. Our presenter this morning is Brad Farnsworth. Bradley T. Farnsworth is a senior consultant and founder of the Farnsworth Group Incorporated. It's a research-based consulting firm that focuses on serving the information needs of companies in the home improvement, residential building, and commercial construction industries. Prior to launching the Farnsworth Group, Mr. Farnsworth served as the Vice President of Marketing and the Director of Research for the National Retail Hardware Association, the NRHA. While at NRHA, he was instrumental in establishing the Home Improvement Research Institute, which is an organization founded by the chief officers of publicly held companies to track market trends. He subsequently was selected to serve as the Institute's executive director. Good morning and welcome, Brad.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. That list is I'm really old. But again, great pleasure to be with this group today, particularly the first time we've been with Fenestration Canada. We do a lot of work over the years with WDMA, and now we're doing some of the similar work with Fenestration Canada. So great pleasure to be here and share some information with you. As Paul mentioned, we're going to go through maybe two different parts of information. First, just kind of a quick look at the structure of what's going on in the Canadian marketplace as it might affect our businesses moving forward over the next couple of years. To say the least, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. It's been a tough year or two, right? Chuckle, right? So yeah, certainly we want to talk about where the market is going to be going, et cetera. And then we'll release some of the preliminary information from the study that Fenestration Canada commissioned for us to do, very similar to the WDMA from the U.S. market. So those firms that have activities in both the U.S. and Canada, there now is parallel research that you can compare market shipments by certain categories. So we're very happy to have been doing that. I want to give a special thanks to Terry, who has been instrumental in helping us get this all together and reaching out to the membership for participation. And Isabel, I don't think I see her around here, but she's also been useful in the correspondence as well. So thank you, Terry, to you, both of y'all. With that, we'll kind of get the slideshow started. There we go. Those of you that are over there, I'm going to be going through a lot of slides. There's plenty of room up front. I know it's like church. Okay. Don't want to come up front, but there is room up here so you can see the slides a little bit better. I'm going to call on you on every single slide. You've seen me in my obligatory jacket, right? Get rid of this thing. It's going to be too warm up here. Again, we're going to walk through some information here. As Paul mentioned, the Farnsworth Group is an organization that 100% of its work is working with manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers who service the home improvement construction industries. Most of our work is custom proprietary to our clients. In fact, a lot of those names on the list, we do a lot of work with both in Canada and the U.S. So again, everything we do as an organization for the past 40 years has been studying this market. As we go through this, I know Terry mentioned grab the mic if you have a question, but certainly would love to have questions as we go. If it's a quick question, shout loud. I'm sorry, Terry, but nope, you can't shout loud. You got to get a mic to you. Oh, okay. So please stop at any point in time. Question. Boy, that's not what we've been thinking. Why do you say that? So let's make this as interactive as we possibly can as we look at some various numbers. I'm a numbers guy, so we do have a lot of charts we're going to go through. Basically, oops, yeah, we have studied this market for a long time, and so there's probably about a dozen data series that we think, if we track on an ongoing basis, kind of gives us a pretty good handle of what's going on in terms of tracking the market in the US as well as tracking the market in Canada. So we're going to walk through those metrics, if you would, to say, if you're thinking about studying the market, these are the critical things that we think over time have proven to driven our markets. And again, I'm going to bunch through some numbers. I'll try to see what they're going to imply for you. So talk about some demand side stuff, current attitudes, both consumer and pros. Talk about the housing market, which is certainly very interesting today in the Canadian market. And then kind of give you market outlook, and then we'll get into the numbers of the demand or the shipments of our industry. So the demand side, a couple of things. First off, one of the most important numbers is household formations. Obviously, the more households we have, the more homes we need, the more remodeling that's going on, et cetera. In Canada, fairly flat, a couple 100,000, about 1.1 over the last 5 years. So a couple 100,000 new household formations each year. Okay. That's important. Now, that's not exactly huge or rapid growth, but when we have new household formations, obviously we're going to need more dwellings, whether they be single family, multi, whether they're bought, whether they're rented, et cetera. So again, tracking household formation is kind of one of the first critical numbers we look at in terms of how healthy the market's going to get. It is interesting, and I'll talk about this in the housing section, that household formations have been exceeding homes produced over the last 5-10 years. So right now there is an unmet supply of homes for what is potentially demand. Problem is people can't afford them, right? Okay, but right now, from a backlog standpoint, there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 million, quote, households that at some point in time are going to be in the housing market, and we're not building as fast as the households are growing. That's good news down the road. Not so good news now because those households can't do anything. Okay, and we'll get into some of those numbers. But again, the other thing that's important is home ownership rate. Actually, in Canada, the numbers didn't drop as severely as they did in the U.S. market. But again, we were down, but about 68%. I doubt we'll ever get back to that 69-70% level. Rates are really going to have to be dropped down, or there's going to be a lot of government intervention to prompt housing, et cetera. Not sure that's going to happen, but a 68% number is pretty good. I'm not sure it's going to get much higher, but if it sustains that, that's kind of good news for our marketplace. So first one is household formation. Second one is labor participation rate. How many people are working? And we did obviously see this drop rather significantly during the pandemic, right? People got laid off, businesses were shutting down, so on and so forth. So it dropped into about the 64% range, back up to 65.5. Not bad, but not in that 68% range. You say, well, gee, that's only 2 percentage points. That can't mean that much. Well, if you take 2 percentage points of all the adult people in Canada, that's a lot of people. Okay. So the drop in labor rate participation has cost our industries stuff. Obviously, if you're not working, you're under pressure. Okay. There's also been a trend that a lot of people are not coming back into the labor force. Okay. That seems to be now changing as time goes along. We would love to again see that number get back up to that 67 plus rate. Again, it doesn't seem like much, but that's a lot of bodies. I'm from southern U.S., so I do a lot of drawl. Sorry about that. I'll say y'all now and then. Don't worry about it. I also say guys a lot. That I'm not being any kind of bad thing. Guys is generic, okay? Don't anybody yell at me. Okay. Um, Again, second thing is labor participation. This could be better. Okay. Next one is unemployment rate. I'm sure most of you are keeping a pretty good eye on this. Did pop up significantly in the 2008 downturn. Certainly popped up again in the pandemic period into that kind of 10% range. Um, Thought it might even been worse, but as I looked at the numbers, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Now about 5.5%, not only overall in Canada, but in the construction trades as well. Again, that is not a great number, but is not as bad as we've seen historically compared to the U.S. market. So Canadian market is doing a little better. The rate is about the same, but we had to come down from a very, very high number in the U.S. market. So again, household formation is critical, participation rates are critical, and unemployment is critical. That's the foundation of people in terms of being available to do something and have money to spend to do something. So again, if you want to begin to track some of these numbers, those are several that I would begin to look at that will kind of keep you ahead of where the market might be going. Last one there is household income. Just so you're aware, this is based on 2021 constant dollars. So this is real dollar growth. From 2016 to 2021, that 7-year period, income, this is total household family income, okay, total with both people are working, et cetera, is now up to 78,000. That's not that fast a growth over that period of time, particularly given what's going on out there. Inflation's right. So again, that is being eroded very, very quickly. So it looks like a good number, but in reality, the purchasing power really hasn't kept up. Oh, this is going to be a very negative presentation, I can tell. I'll try to be positive at the end of it, but these are the numbers. I think you all know it's out there. You're feeling it out there with your businesses, et cetera. It's a tough market right now coming out of the pandemic. Again, interest rates, no surprise to anybody here. This is killing the housing market. Absolutely killing it. You all are a little different in Canada because basically your loans are on a 5-year fixed rate kind of number. In the US, we work on 15-year fixed or 30-year fixed. How the banks get away with a 5-year fixed thing, I'm not quite sure, because they get to change it every 5 years. That's great if it's going down, but if it's going up, that's a real problem, okay, here in Canada. And we'll see that in the housing numbers. So this 7% rate, up from that 3% rate that a lot of us got accustomed to, particularly the younger generation got very accustomed to this 3% kind of number. Again, I go back in the US when I had a home, I had a 14%er. So in reality, is this that bad? Probably not, but the perception, particularly of the younger generations, is that it's horrendous. Okay. What we've seen happen since kind of that 2021 period on, as it began to move towards that 5, 6, 7% range, it took a while for the mindsets to readjust that there's not going to be a 3%er around anymore, right? So at some point they began to adjust, and when it hit that 5 number, well, it took a while, but I still got to buy a home. I still got to do something. So it kind of started to come back because people simply got adjusted mentally to that. It took about 9 months. Okay, and then the market started getting good again, and then they popped back up. Our best guess as a firm is that that number needs to be kind of close to 6% or just under 6% for people to begin to break back into the market. Does that make sense? We know most people now say we're not going to get that 3 or 4%. So if you ever could come back down around that 6 range, I'm going to have to do what I have to do. People are still having kids, and we still have to live someplace, and we still have to move for work and stuff. So again, once that kind of gets down and about a point thereabouts, we think the market will be picking up. So I keep a close eye on that. Everyone was thinking that that could begin to happen later this year. It's looking difficult right now. Okay, so 2024, which we all thought second half might kind of get better, we're not as comfortable saying that anymore. I think I was saying that at the WDMA last year. Yeah, it's going to be great. Second half of 24. I'm going to have to eat my words in Minneapolis next month when I present this stuff again. Okay. So again, those are kind of key macro things that if you want to keep attention to them, it'll kind of give you insights as to when the market's going to break. Housing affordability, this is again the critical because the combination of rising home prices, right, and interest rates have driven affordability crazy. If you go back in the 2017, that early period, it was consistently about 36% of disposable income went to housing. You'll see in 2023 that number is 49%, almost half goes to housing. That is where the problem really is significant. Even with interest rates up, household income is not keeping pace, particularly after inflation, to be able to handle that. That's why we see the market in so much trouble right now. Okay, it's just too expensive. Good news, housing prices are slowing. I won't say they're declining yet, but you'll see that 11% coming out of the pandemic. You know, that was crazy. Well, anybody sell a home lately? It was good news, right? God, I made a fortune. Then what'd you have to do? Got to go buy one. We just did that. My wife and I are, and I'm supposed to slowly be retiring. I don't think I'm going to do it, but we sold a house. God, we made a couple $100,000 on it. Wow. Ended up buying a home. Cost us about the same amount of money. Terry's heard that. Had to put in a pool for the grandkids and everything else. So didn't net very much, but at least we changed lifestyle a little bit. Okay. So that's the problem. People can't sell because they have to buy. Okay. These are compounding the problems of their overall macro look at what's going on in the Canadian market, as well as most markets, US certainly. Okay. Questions on any of that? Get ready to run. Okay.
I don't think that. No.
Boy, he's tough, isn't he?
I just read a study from CIBC that said we need to do a five-fold increase in housing starts to bring housing prices down. And we're way behind. We need 1 million homes a year. We're doing 205,000 right now.
Yeah.
Housing prices aren't coming down. Interest rates aren't coming down. This isn't going to change until there's some housing starts.
Yeah. And that 1 million, 1.2, I've heard up to maybe 1.5, you know, is because we've got this backlog of household formations, both just in terms of natural growth, as in terms of also migration, that we've got this demand. So basically, until we get that equilibrium, there is concern that prices may not decelerate too fast. They may not accelerate. The only challenge will be if it lasts a long time at this unaffordability, people still have to do things. Okay, so people are eventually going to have to bite the bullet and say, I'm transitioning life, I'm having kids, or I'm getting older and I want to downsize my home. So there's going to be some action that has to take place just basically on life stages, right? Okay, what happens when you get married? You go broke, but no. Eventually you have kids, right? And that house that was so cool when you were, a couple isn't so cool anymore. The housing isn't the same. The education area opportunities aren't the same. So you still have to move. So that is true. I don't know that 5 times is going to happen anytime real soon, but I do think we'll see some moderation because people still have to do things when they change life cycles. Okay. Is there another question there? Or? Okay. All righty. So again, kind of backdrop on some things. The second area we look at that basic underlying fundamentals, candidly, those aren't looking really great right now. Gee, shocking news to you all, right? Okay, we all kind of watch those numbers here. Those are the 4 or 5 that I think are kind of critical to think about this market in the future. Next issue is kind of what are attitudes out there in terms of feeling in terms of the marketplace. Some of those numbers typed in there are wrong. My apologies. But we saw consumer confidence. If that 53 you see there around March 20, that actually is 33, and some of the other numbers are wrong. My apologies. But we went from kind of a standard consumer confidence based on conference board stuff that were kind of was consistently in the 50s, right? Nice kind of consistent path. Everybody was feeling okay. Dropped down to 33. If you go back far enough, even some of the major world events that happened, okay, the U.S. getting hit by 9/11, those kind of things, we didn't see it drop that far, okay? So the pandemic basically, not surprisingly, shut everybody down. You just didn't do anything. If you're a retailer, which we advise a lot of them, if it wasn't on big time promotion, it didn't sell. So you saw retailers getting away from everyday low price and some of the other things, and it became highly promotional. And it just didn't sell once it was on promotion. That's now eased a bit. We're back up to 48 as of March. Better. Consumers saying I'm doing okay, but not great. That needs to certainly be above 50, back in the 55 range. We would begin to see the consumer loosening up a little bit. It looks like the second half is going to be very nervous for consumers. We saw a lot of consumer spend coming out of the pandemic because people had money kind of stored up, I guess is one way of saying it, and they spent it. Now that money is gone. So unless we get that up to 40 or 50, 55, but that's improving. That's a good sign because consumers are not overly negative. If you're not buying a home or something, you're not impacted by all that, right? So you're really just dealing with day-to-day kind of stuff, and that's getting a little bit better. Business confidence, that's another kind of story, has just continued to decline over the last handful of months. As you'll see, the average out there is probably in the 100, 103 range, et cetera. We're now down to under 97, certainly under 100. And that's kind of a key metric. Again, maybe not as bad as we saw in the pandemic. The early on in that chart was down even further. But right now, there's a lot of concern out there with business. Is that true for everybody here? Okay. It's a tough market. Okay. There's no other way to say that. And people are nervous about that. Again, that number needs to kind of get back up into the hundreds for really the market to take off. So I kind of talk about these numbers in terms of when can we assume really the market begin to take off, which will happen, despite my pessimistic discussion here. No, it will happen. Okay. How about the housing market? Again, difficult to say the least. If you look at home sales, 2023 kind of getting close to, and this is, by the way, new and existing, in that 450 range. If you look at the 10-year average, that's in the 450, 480. We need, new housing, 300, 350 would be nice, right? So tough year, 23. We thought 24 would probably take off a little stronger than it did. It's still yet to be seen whether we'll even reach the 492 because there's so much pressure right now. So I'm not even sure that 492 is going to happen at this point in time. Optimistic about 2025, kind of as optimistic as we were about 2024. Things just didn't move as quickly. But we do see it recovering both in terms of existing home sales, as you know, is important for the home repair remodeling market. Okay, so as you have existing home sales, the 6 months before you move, you fix up your home, right? And even having bought a home, whether it's new or existing, you spend a lot of money the next 12 to 18 months readjusting your home. Okay. So housing turnover is critical to the home improvement side, let alone the new res market. Okay. And it's, again, been difficult. We think that is picking up. Okay. Any contrary thoughts on this, please raise your hand and we'll make Terry work today. There's one.
Yeah, Brad from Marvin. So are the numbers, especially for 2025, optimistic? Was it based on the thought that they'd be lowering interest rates this second half, and has it been corrected?
Yeah.
What it looks like they may not do that?
Yeah, this is from the Real Estate Association set of numbers. and they are probably a little optimistic in the first place. So, yeah, I think it might be optimistic, although I guess rates are going to have to start coming down at some point. And I just don't think it's going to be 26 or 27. So we would still anticipate the rate coming down, maybe fourth quarter, but certainly the first half of next year. Whether this is optimistic, maybe a little. Okay. A lot of it's going to depend on the stability of home prices. At least they're not growing at 5-10% a year. So if we can get that to stabilize even, at some point you begin to adjust to the interest rate reality. Like I said, you got to do something sometimes. So once the consumer mentally adjusts to the reality of where it's going to be and have time to plan their budgets accordingly, which is what we saw again a little bit when it went from 3 to 5 and was hovering around there. 6 to 9 months later, people had adjusted their budget and thinking, and they kind of got going again, particularly in the existing home market. A little different in Canada, but that was certainly going on. So yeah, maybe a touch. Long-winded answer, sorry. Okay, this was the problem, right? This is price index. Good news, we got all that home equity now, don't we? Anybody spending it? Be careful, no. Okay, those that have a home, this has been great news. Net worth has improved for a lot of households based on a 20% increase in home value. Cool. Okay, until you have to buy again. But a lot of people in the life cycle are going from we were supposed to go from like 5,000 feet down to 2,500. We made it about 3,500, close. Okay, and that equity can come and play then. Okay, so again, this is probably the biggest problem that's been out there driving the pressure on this market. Probably more so in my mind than interest rates, because it's just accelerating. It is starting to slow down. You can see that line's flattening a little bit. But we have to get prices to begin to stabilize because people are just worried. Then I think interest rate will kind of get comfortable. Part of the problem with this stuff is the stock available out there, right? The number of months supply of existing or new is very, very low. The builders were not going to get caught in the dilemma of the 2008 housing market crash, right? They just are not going to overbuild, period. That's why we're short. They're not going to get caught that way again. So the supply of new and supply of existing, relatively speaking, is low. That keeps prices what? Elevated. So something's going to break there. We can't keep this on forever, I don't think. Housing starts. This has been a phenomenon that was particularly interesting in Canada. You'll see from 2008, particularly that crisis, the shift from single family detached to multifamily has been significant. Why? You can't afford the house. So that's maybe reflecting there's renters out there. Okay. But this, I hadn't realized it had gotten this dramatic till I put this presentation to you. That is a huge shift in demand structure. Okay, does that make sense? Have you been feeling some of that? Okay, that's extreme. I don't think that will last forever, but this has shifted product needs, labor needs, particularly a lot of larger properties that are trying to get pre-sold, built, so the builder's not sitting on stuff. But this shift has major implications in the Canadian market. Now, this is certainly metro driven, right? Top 6 metros account for a lot of this activity. But I assume from your all's perspective, from a product standpoint, that's a significant issue. Okay. And it's going to take some years, even if we start seeing the market change and get back to normal periods back in where it's at least 60-40 or something. And this is down to what, 25%, 20%. Okay. So if we get that back to 50, that'll be fine. That will probably happen, but this is still probably going to be a couple of years out before we see a swing in this thing. So if there's a major finding besides just looking at what the trends are, this shift in demand structure is kind of critical in terms of what builders are doing in product development. Okay. Like I said, isn't this entertaining? Hey, I'm just the messenger. Don't kill me. I think we need to understand this backdrop, and so one, we can begin to track it and do it better in the future. Soon we do some of these in next year or two. We'll kind of keep updating this for the group and kind of keep doing it. I do this every year at the WDMAs just to kind of, they still keep asking me back. I don't know why. I make everybody sad by the time they leave, but this is kind of by province. This is just, we can't read some of those. By the way, I forgot to mention, this presentation would be available to those that want it in French. If you want this in French, that touch base with Terry, I assume. So this will be available in French, as will the full report at some point in time. This is again by market. So again, you saw home sales and your drop 10%. The forecast again coming from several different sources we kind of aggregated said 2024 was going to rebound a little. It is, but not that much. And again, to your question, is 25 optimistic? Yeah. No, of course not. No, maybe a little. Okay, that just gives it by province if you want to kind of look, trying to where your markets are located. Okay, and then kind of the final kind of chunk is what's going on out there. Looking at the future, this is Stats Canada data. Again, coming out of the pandemic, we saw a huge jump in home improvement repair. Okay, people were staying put, they had money and they knew they were going to live in their house, so they were kind of nesting, and they did a lot of those things. We saw a lot of big ticket projects taking place. Major kitchen remodel, major backyard patio additions, you know, gazebos, those kind of things, because that became living space. Those numbers were out of this world. You saw the retailers' numbers were just going bonkers. The retailers are having now, if you're watching like the Home Depot or the Lowe's or Rona or some of them, they're trying to comp against unbelievable numbers. So how do you budget when you had a 20% jump the year before? Basically, most of our retailers, that particularly the independents that we work with, are basically going back to 2019, running some numbers and say, well, if I would have grown at a normal rate, where should I be in 2023? That's what I'm going to start budgeting for, not 5% on 2020, 21, because it just doesn't make any sense. Forecast is for that to have come down. We think that's going to continue to moderate. So the growth will be, much less than that, probably the 3-4% range. We got another source that kind of looks at it in a slightly different way. Those of you may be familiar with the Home Improvement Research Institute. If you're not aware of it, it's a very good source of information. The membership fee is relatively low, and we spend collectively about $750,000 on industry research. They have a Canadian portion of their portfolio that you could take a look at and buy, but they produce a lot of good numbers. So just let me know and I'll put you in touch. We manage it for their members, but it's a very cost effective. I know the U.S. cost is like $12,000, and we spend $750,000 in research dollars. Okay, so you get a lot of bang for the buck. Their numbers would suggest, again, 23, in terms of the consumer spend, was down in 2023, 3 or 4 percentage points, improving to be maybe flat this year and then beginning to rebound. Again, you'll see those numbers in the 2021 period were just outlandish. Okay. What was also happening at that same time? Supply chain, the dreaded word, right? Okay. Retailers were just scrambling to get stuff because they were selling out the wazoo and they couldn't get product. How many people had trouble shipping? Nobody's going to admit it, right? we can handle it. We'll get you product. That's lightning from what we said. Most of the supply chain is not gone, but certainly mitigated a lot lately. True or not? Sort of. Okay. Again, we expect that to be more modest, more traditional, but do pick up over the next handful of years. Their professional market home improvement really took it on the chin the last couple of years. What we were seeing historically was the big ticket projects. Again, that $50,000, $60,000 major kitchen remodel became a $15,000 replace the countertops or replace the cabinets. So what stopped, which affected the builder's revenue, or excuse me, the pros' revenue, was the big tickets were going away. You talk to retailers and their kitchen and bath design centers were just struggling like crazy. Okay. Don't know specific about windows, how it was affecting that, but again, slowed down. We're projecting, here he's projecting that market is going to be flat. Again, unless we begin to see existing home velocity pick up, housing stuff pick up, there's no work out there. Okay. So, better, but not going to be great. Through in a non-residential, those are a commercial side. You'll see this one is a much more bouncy, right? Okay. Commercial side is much more bouncy, but has been under pressure the last couple of years. Again, these sources are all kind of on the Canadian market, either Stats Canada or some other sources that we use. Okay. You can't read this one either, but I wanted to put it in there so it kind of summarizes. And this again is from a combination of sources that we kind of put together. But this kind of gives you a highlight of a lot of things all at once going out to 2020, 2029. Real GDP in Canada is forecasted to kind of be in the 1.5, 1 to 2 range. So relatively stable. Okay. Everything else is kind of relatively stable. Again, I look at labor force, stable. Again, most of the stuff, they're forecasting inflation at 4% for this year. I'm not sure I'm going to be that low. You'll see their housing start forecast again in that 240, 250 range. I do think it does need to be in that. It can't be a million, but 300 it would be nice. 350 would really help. I think that will probably be a year or two away if we can get back to that kind of a number. Okay. I'm doing on time here. Questions, comments, disagreements? I put everybody to sleep again, Terry. I'm awake. Question there. Predictions? Is that what they say?
Yeah,
Coming.
predictions.
We're going to try. You got, well, then share them. Excuse me. Go ahead.
No problem. If so, I'm always puzzled that the prices are way up. The building, and then all we talk about is the million houses needed, et cetera, and it clearly the rate is not getting anywhere close to that.
Right.
Right. So, because the prices are up, why isn't everybody out there just building as fast as they can? Right. And and I don't know if any of your work on this addressed this, but it seems to me the regulatory and zoning policies in the municipalities has to be a gigantic drag on this. I know in my town of London, it certainly is, and a lot of other places, the provincial government is trying to force municipalities to streamline things and actually get building going with mixed degrees of success and mixed degrees of opposition, to be honest. But I'm wondering if, because you're also doing all this work in the US, I'm wondering if you're looking at jurisdictions that don't have our, frankly, bullshit zoning policies, and you see more reactivity in the market when the prices get better.
Yeah. I'd comment about that $1 million. million households. We don't need 1 million a year. We just need to get another million above our 250 or whatever sometime. Okay. Because household formation is about that 250 range, et cetera. So as that goes, it helps that demand. Yeah, I didn't mention, and I should have, besides interest rates, there's a couple of things going on. One, the tightening of credit standards to get a loan really killed for a while now. They're starting to loosen that up a little bit, but it got incredibly tight. Even if you had the money, or at least a reasonable amount of money, you know, you could have 25% down and may not be able to get a loan. Okay. With a credit score or whatever, you know, say 800 or, you know. So that was when I should have mentioned that policy to tighten it, because the banks got scared after 2008 debacle, 2020. The regulatory issues probably are harsher in Canada. I don't want to say that all of the U.S. I mean, our West Coast, you know, Oregon, Washington, California. I'm not political, so I don't. I think they're all crooks now. I didn't say that. So that liberal side of the country, we got so many regulations that it's really affecting them. The middle of the country is not doing too bad. So unfortunately, the populations are on the coast. So the housing markets look much better in the central part of the U.S. market, but that's not necessarily where all the people are. So we're not building to the demand. We've got, there's one organization that projects that we've got 3.5 million shortage of required homes based on household formation in the U.S. So we're 3 or 4 times worse in terms of backlog, which again is keeping pressure on existing home in particular. Why aren't the builders building? One, I don't think they know that people can get money. So they're not going to overbuild. Too many got killed, right? So, you know, they're not going to overbuild, and I don't know as much about in Canada in terms of land shortage, but land under contract for the builders in the U.S. is very thin right now. So they don't have places to build. And then the regs are starting to really kill. In the U.S., we were doing okay for a while, but the last 3 years, the regulations are just killing them again. So I think there's reasons they're not building, even though they know they could sell them, but people can't get money.
One here first.
Yep.
Got a question on turnover, sort of generational turnover on home ownership. You know, building codes for the last decade have pushed the concept of aging in place, which basically promotes retirees to stay in their house, not move out. And I use my parents as a classic example, mortgage free. They live in a 2,500 square foot house. They're pushing 80 and they have no intention of leaving. And we got to figure out what to do about that. Meanwhile, you've got millennials who have 2 kids living in a 2-bedroom condo that are bursting at the seams. And I believe 25, 30 years ago, generationally, you would see retirees downsize, go to a 55 plus townhouse complex.
Yeah.
Our generation would move up into those homes and it would transition and flip faster. And Metro Vancouver kind of reported last year that almost 50% of households ownership is mortgage free.
Yeah.
Which tells me the vast volume of baby boomers who bought, like my parents bought in Vancouver in 72 for $20,000 in North Vancouver. I won the lottery, but I'm not going to see the inherit. They even said my kids are going to inherit their generational wealth, not me. I don't need it. They're good. Like, I got 3 boys. Where are they going to live? So are you looking at the lack of turnover as part of this issue?
There's 2 parts to that. The 55 plus community is now 65 plus community. Okay. I'm 71 and I like what I do. I'm going to do this for a long time. So my son bought the business for me. So unless he kicks me out, which is possible any day now. Okay. We're not to that stage yet. My wife and I are talking about moving. I don't know if you've got anything here called the Villages down in Florida. It's a active retirement community. She says, well, we're going to sell the house in 3-4 years and then we're going to move there. Well, that will be 75, not 65, not 55. So that turnover has been slowed down, which is putting pressure on the market. Did I answer the question? So the 55 is not the 55 anymore.
I would think that another constraint has got to be the labor. I mean, builders are having a time finding the labor for all the trades now. Imagine doing that times 3 or 4, you know.
You know, in the pandemic downturn, when people lost jobs, a lot of our tradespeople had to find work in other places because there was no work, and not most, a significant portion did not come back. They found other type jobs. So that compounded the problem. Now, there's a lot of initiatives underway. I mean, I don't know if Home Depot is doing it here in Canada, but Depot is sponsoring with commercials. You know, we are going to help the pro dilemma, you know, and they're going to set up colleges and stuff to technical schools, et cetera. So we don't see an easy way out of that because of, I suppose, the enigma that, you know, blue collar is not cool. Well, that's changing pretty rapidly because you can make more money blue collaring right now almost than some of the college graduates. So we're seeing that turn, but there's a significant shortage, particularly of skilled, a really licensed electrician, licensed plumber. So I don't have a solution for how that's, but it is certainly affecting. It might have taken 5 months, might take 7 months because you just got to time it better. 10 minutes, I'm going to go here. Sorry. Get babbling on this stuff, I'll go forever. What are the implications of what we just went through? I think a handful of things. First off, because supply chain has begun to weaken, and the supply chain, when that was really crazy, basically retailers were scrambling to get anything they could get. So the power they had usually was gone a little bit because they just bought whatever they could get, right? If you had it, you could sell it. Well, that supply chain is going away. The market's changing back. So we're going to have a return to more traditional competitive dynamics. The channel power is going to get stronger. So those line reviews that you hate to do are going to get tougher again. Okay. Again, 3 years ago, do you got anything? Can you ship it to me? Now, where's my extra 5, right? Anybody? Okay. Secondly, we are going to see, because of the pressure on inflation, increasing consumer price sensitivity. I don't think we'll get to the 2008 period where almost everything really had to be discounted for it to move, but we're going to get more consumer price sensitivity. So as you think about your products and your markets and your price points that you're producing, I think we're going to see that begin to return, not crazy like we had. And thirdly, there's going to be real pressure from the retailers on inventory turnover, getting your line as thin as they can get it. Okay. I used to have 12 screws. I'm going to give you 8. Anybody feeling any of that yet? Okay. So those 3 things are the result of what we just kind of talked about, in my opinion. Thirdly, what can you do about it? Focus on branding. We're seeing, at least we do a lot of work for manufacturers, and our activity in our branding research has accelerated over the last couple of years. We didn't have to worry about brand. We couldn't make them a product. Now the competition is coming back, so we're going to worry about branding. So we're doing a lot more. What's my brand stand for? I kind of neglected my brand for 3 or 4 years. We're seeing more of that. A fight for market share is going to return. Again, when you had supply chain problems, you just shipped what you had. So get ready for competitive dynamics shifting to more market share. What am I going to do about that? Like we always do as manufacturers, product development. How do I stay ahead of my competitor with product development? We think that will kind of return to the toolbox, if you would, of the manufacturer to kind of keep market share, keep people excited, et cetera. So those are kind of the results of things quick like that we see. I've been around for a few hours after this, so if you want to catch me, we can talk about some of those. Let's get into the actual study itself. This is just the highlight findings, okay? Part of this study was to do some survey research amongst pros and channel. A couple of questions we asked them: expected changes in shipments. This is from the manufacturer as well as from some of the stuff that we see, but from the manufacturer's perspective, 2023 increased. At least this is what the people who participated. By the way, those in the room that participated in this first year of FinCan's study. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We had a pretty good participation. Okay. Still thinking in 24, expecting increases. I challenged that a little bit. Business challenges, delays in supply chain, but that dropped from 23 of 68% down to 48%. So it is improving. Inflation is now jumping up and is still very, very strong there. Labor issues, you saw that. So these are some of the concerns that the participants shared with us. Looking at contractors, they get more comfortable. We do one in the U.S., and most of them are saying that they still have backlogs for like 3 months. Now, a while back it was like 6 months. So they're not panicking at this point in time. It's just not quite as long of a lead time in terms of what they used to have in terms of committed work. So again, you're going to see kind of a mixed bag in sales stuff. So they're not panicking out there, the pros or the big box guys. Okay, let's talk about this. This is the study you will see. This is just some of the highlight stuff. As you'll read there, this is the first year we've done this for Canada. We've done it for WDMA US for 6 or 7 years. They're going to look very parallel. So if you've got activity in both places, the studies are designed to look very parallel. So you can kind of compare those numbers. Thanks again to all those that participated. I want to reiterate to those that participated or those that could participate in the future, we get the data, no one else sees it. So this is not ever seen by anybody at Fin Canada. So this is extremely confidential information. We understand that and we respect that and protect it significantly. Okay. Categories in this year's included residential windows, sliding doors, hinge doors, and residential. The full report, which we're not going to show here, does provide the shipment data by material and type where it's appropriate. So you can kind of begin to see in province X by type, okay, as you look through some of this data. So we hope it's a very good study. If I understand from Stefan, members will get the study. Members who participated gets the study free, and then it's available to members who didn't and others as well for, I think, a modest fee. I think it was a way to incentivize people to participate, right? Okay. What do we got here? This is residential windows. This is, again, shipments in thousands. This was 23 data is what we collected from people. Obviously, we're in 24. So this would imply, 4,370,000 residential windows were shipped. Again, this is shipped in 2023. Please, any feedback anybody could give us as you look at your own internal stuff, the more feedback we get in, the more we can refine these numbers as we move forward with this study. So please, to you, to him, give us some feedback because we need to understand how we're doing here. Then these forecasts are ours based on our looking at those numbers that we just looked at, okay, and a combination of things in terms of other multiple forecasts on housing starts. We're trying to figure out where we think the best range is. A lot of analysis goes into it. But we're suggesting that window market would be down 1% and then kick back in 25, 26. Again, kind of reflecting our feeling that 24 is not going to be as good as people thought it was just 4 months ago. Okay. Windows, again, you can kind of get us all broken out by province and stuff in the full report. But that's our windows look. Sliding patio doors, again, had a decline in 2024. And this is data coming from you all. We do ask those who respond, what are your estimates for the next year? So this is a combination of our stuff and your all stuff mashed together to come up with our best thought. Obviously, if I ever come back, you can look at me, Brad, you were wrong on 2024. That's okay. This gives us your feeling of where we think it is. So, and again, picking back up in 25, 26. So you can see we do believe that this market is going to break. Okay. What ever thought first half or last half of 24? No. First half of 25, maybe, but we think certainly second half. Elections do matter. Like I said, I'm not political, but we'll see what happens in terms of certainly the U.S. market, which does have an effect, with our neighbors to the north and south. Okay. All right. Anybody falling off the table yet? Okay, residential windows. Oops, I went the wrong way, sorry. Hinge doors, 137,000 units. Now those cameras are up. This is available, I assume, just to let people know you can get a copy of this presentation, both in English and in French. And finally, entry door, 880. And again, you'll see almost the same pattern consistently from what you guys were telling us versus what we had in our own kind of data. Again, then this is very rich by province, by material type, et cetera. You'll have in the full report. So that should be out. I think we'll get it to you guys within 2 weeks. So probably within, it's in 30 days or so, the full report. And you beat the DMA. Okay. That would be that. And I think I'm about where I'm supposed to be. Questions? I know there's a lot of data in there. But again, it gives you our best shot. I think where our market is. I wish it was more uplifting news, but I think that's where we think it's at. Questions? Debates? Disagreements?
Brad, you've got a lot of data about housing demand and so forth. Has there been any studies on what the capacity is for building houses in Canada?
Oops, I have my stack of stuff here. There's a something called a housing supply report. And this was probably trying to get maybe towards your question of what could happen. I don't have an answer to that very candidly. I don't know that I've seen a study that says we can't even build 350, even if we wanted to. So I haven't seen anything like that. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There's a company called Build Force that's partially funded by Stats Canada. Build Force has some pretty good stuff on labor markets and some other stuff. I would look at that. Stats Canada is not bad in terms of if you really want to dig, but I haven't seen anything, no.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. I would believe that builders will find a way if the demand does open up. We will see.
Yeah, good morning. Great study. Thanks for all the work and info. When it comes to residential entry doors, so your final numbers, do they include the multifamily? Like that will be broken down further in the full report?
I'll have to check on that for the Canadian one. I'm not sure.
I think we discussed earlier this morning that
This is residential window, so that would include multifamily.
okay, so the doors would as well.
I believe so. Most of this is residential. We were in the WDMA, if I remember correctly, we do some commercial side stuff. We didn't get enough responses this year in PenCan to do the commercial side of windows. We'll be working on that as we kind of get more responses in. Okay. With that, I will say thank you very much for your time and patience. Appreciate it.